And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking Esteban Ocon gone from Alpine, but as predicted, he is going to be in Canada. But the biggest story is, at the end of the year, they've both said goodbye to each other. Did he go willingly, or was he pushed? We will get into the truth of the situation right here. There's a couple of good articles, particularly from the race we want to get into. The truth about it. Was it all about Monaco? Or was Esteban Ocon always going to leave Alpine? And now with Ocon gone, arguably this year, so far, their best driver in terms of how he's coping with Gasly, who is going to be taking his place? So let's first of all have a look at what Ocon has said on social media. Here's a post. Here's pretty much the post on Twitter. And he said, BWT Alpine F1 team have agreed together to part ways, and I've agreed together to part ways at the end of the season. The Enstone family has played a significant part in my life, dating back to my Lotus program, my Lotus junior days. I feel incredibly lucky and privileged to have achieved things I did with the team. He's mentioned about crossing paths with so many inspiring individuals and his time there. He said there's still a long way to go this season. His focus and energy is 100% dedicated to the team. Like many drivers, a lot has been said about my future and beyond. News will be announced in due course, apparently. And then he's put some French. It's sad, isn't it? I mean, they had a good time. He is Alpine's only F1 winner. If you remember the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2021, it was helped significantly by a Valtteri Bottas long dart, but still. So let's get into why this has all happened. And so Ocon is gone at the end of the year. We know that now. They've announced it, and Ocon has announced it. And I can't help but feel that after what the Alpine boss said at Monaco, there will be consequences. We all thought, oh no, he won't be in Canada, but to some, you can make an argument. It seems a lot worse than that because he's not going to be at Alpine next year. And looking at that, there's only 1/3 of the season. We've only had 1/3 of the season. And I think kind of understandably, we don't have an announcement of what Ocon is going to do next. But let's have a look at how this all happened and why it's been handled like this. So the big question is, and the big question everyone's going to ask is, was this all about Monaco? Well, no, believe it or not, seems to be the general consensus. But maybe was it about Monaco, as in the straw breaking the camel's back, the last chance saloon, the time when Alpine have said, we have had enough? But that's the obvious question. Especially when Team Prince, after Bruno Famine tried, said what he said in Canal, there'll be consequences. But even the race is saying it's certainly not Ocon's punishment for driving into his teammate. Looking at Ocon, looking at a standalone thing, Ocon and Gasly, they are suggesting that it's been known for some time that Ocon was increasingly unlikely to be retained by Alpine beyond this year. And they suggested that a lot of people are suggesting that what happened in Monaco did not help, but it must have eradicated any shiny chance Ocon had of being kept on. So Monaco itself wasn't the sole reason, but it may have been that last straw. So Gasly is going nowhere as a relatively new signing, they've said, they've got an option for, I think, 2025, and the combustible nature that a lot of people are saying between Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly always had an expiration date. Neither, you can make an argument, are the perfect team player for the Alpine team, and the Monaco incident might be best viewed as completely cementing that view. Now, if you have a look in the lap, we won't go into it because we'll probably be just copyright struck. But if you go into that first lap and have a look at it, even on YouTube, I think they've got replays, and it's clear, yes, Ocon, that there was a gap there. It was unwise to go for that move. None of this, if a gap exists, you don't go for it, you're no longer a racing driver. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that, with Ayrton said, to a point, simply because there's different types of gaps, isn't there? And Ocon ended up straying wide, hitting Gasly, and it all went horrible. But if you reverse a bit, that they were always banging wheels before that, and you could make an argument that Gasly beforehand wasn't particularly innocent as well in the corners leading up to that. But I digress. So it's clear that Alpine did not want these two together. Now, as the likely scenario has become a definite outcome, Alpine wants to publicly signal that it's got an open seat on the driving market, and this is what a lot of people feel it's about. With Ocon gone, yep, you're definitely going, Ocon. We need a good driver for next year. We need to tell everyone that we are a works team, essentially. They are still a works team. Appreciate they don't act like one at the moment, but they are a works team, and we want a driver for next year. And by emphasising that, who's going to replace Esteban Ocon? Well, as we know, there's a few people. It's obviously not going to be Esteban Ocon, but Carlos Sainz, however, it seems to be an Audi-backed Sauber, or more likely Williams. Valtteri Bottas, if he doesn't get the Williams seat, what a safe pair of hands. Or, and one out of left field, the racers mentioned it, and other people have, or a Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, that wouldn't be too bad, would it? A Yuki Tsunoda at Alpine. The other one we forget to mention, and is part of their sports car program, is Mick Schumacher. Also, don't forget Alpine reserve driver Jack Doohan. So, outside contenders, also Zhao Guanyu. You could maybe put Mick Schumacher as an outside contender, but yeah. So once again, to summarise why, this wasn't all about Monaco, but that seemed to be the last straw. When we go back all the way, like last year, the Australian Grand Prix, for example, Ocon does have a tendency to have issues with his teammates. They have come together. I think he came together, nearly with Fernando Alonso, I believe, in their last year together. Sergio Perez, albeit, I think you can make an argument. For me, when I look at the Sergio Perez Ocon ones, I don't want to be accused of hating on Perez, but yeah, I think most of them, I feel, from what I remember, were Sergio Perez's fault. Not all of them. But yeah, between the two of them, you can make an argument that they could have been avoided. And I remember, was it Racing Point or Force India at the time, getting so angry. So a lot of journalists like the race have come out and said how unusual it is to have this announcement as kind of like a standalone news item at this point in the year. Normally, one driver announces he's leaving, and then the team say, hey, we've signed this person up, suggesting that at the moment Ocon has nowhere to go. That's kind of like a coordinated press release. But Ocon has said himself, I will announce my plan soon. So maybe there's something more concrete lined up. Now, in a similar vein, Ocon has not been sat around waiting for this to be official. He has had talks with both Haas and Williams, and he's often been linked with Sauber and Audi. He is a fast and solid F1 driver in respect to that, unless obviously he sees his teammate. He seems to have more incidents with his teammates than others. But the race is saying that and I've got no reason not to believe them, that they think it's fairly likely that Ocon is going to remain on the F1 grid somewhere. Or there are a few drivers aiming to grab one of these last places. Exactly who he ends up driving for, they said, could be a mystery. And they asked, the last question we're going to ask along with the race's article was like Thanos, was it inevitable? And Monaco, as we know, was not an isolated incident, but there have been individual squabbles. And they're seemingly, once again, we can go back to the dramatised Drive to Survive between the two, if you watch, where they just didn't get on there and they were accused of putting their petty squabble ahead of the team. Now, everyone said it was a big risk to pair Ocon and Gasly, given the tensions between the two of them. They go way back to their karting days, and kind of like Hamilton and Rosberg, they were, believe it or not, initially friends. But that soon changed with, if you remember how the Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton fallout started, when it gets competitive, understandably, it very much has the potential to change. And it's well known that it wasn't just on-track incidents that fueled their falling out, but things supposedly happening off-track as well. Once again, Alpine well aware when in 2023 they started this partnership. And it took all of 3 races, as we know, for Gasly and Ocon to drive into each other, and that was at that restart at the Australian Grand Prix. What is surprising is they generally avoided a repeat of such flashpoints last year. However, apparently there was a intense war for supremacy, understandably like you would do, with both determined to establish themselves as the Alpine team leader. Gasly won out in the second half of 23, while Ocon, as we've mentioned, has reasserted himself, but cracks were starting to appear, and now it's pretty much boiled over, hasn't it, with this announcement? Parting ways, a lot of people have suggested, was inevitable. So Ocon's leaving, and sooner or later he'll have a deal the races in a bag to race somewhere else. If he and Gasly were capable of causing problems on track when they're driving for the same team, who knows what will happen to one of them if one of them is, trying to keep their seat. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I would love Yuki Tsunoda or bring back a Mick Schumacher, give him a chance again. I think he was the second year at Haas was a bit unfair on Mick. I think he deserves another chance, but second chances. I mean, look at Alex Albon, for example. Second chances. Sergio Perez very much had a resurgence with that signing for Red Bull. And what's interesting as well, Red Bull have said they suggested they're going to make an announcement soon about something. So an announcement of an announcement. Many people have said, "Oh, is this Sergio Perez confirmed for Red Bull for next year?" Or is it Esteban Ocon? I don't think it's going to be Esteban Ocon. But the way the season's going so far, with Adrian Newey gone for, Ferrari signing Lewis Hamilton, Alonso re-signing with Aston Martin on a long-term deal. Who knows? That may be one of the sensible decisions in terms of the craziness of this off-season. Anyway, if you made it to the end, please give us a like, give us a subscribe for more motorsport action. We play the odd video game here, obviously Formula One. We do touring car, the odd bit of IndyCar where we can. We also do rally. There'll be our rally fallout from the Rally Italia at some point this week. We have the most motorsport content, I think. We do a video, at least one video every day, if not more. We've just had our first F1 2024 Nigel Mansell edition, where we take dear old Nige, in a Williams and see what we can do in F1 24. We've just had the Bahrain round. It wasn't boring. It was interesting and surprising. It's just short races. It's just about 5 laps, so it's definitely worth watching if you would like to. Other than that, we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Goodbye.